You're listening to the Save the Marriage podcast. Your marriage can be saved and strengthened if you have the right information. Join Dr. Lee Baucom as he explores ways for you to improve your relationship and your life, starting right now.
I just got off the phone with somebody who told me that the crisis was just out of the blue, that suddenly their spouse was ready to give up and walk away. And I had to ask the question, was it really out of the blue? Or were there signs along the way and you knew something was going on, you just didn't take action? You didn't find a way forward. And this reminds me of what I see repeatedly with people who say they want to save their marriage. They want to get traction, but they don't know what to do. So let's talk about this whole process. I'm Lee Baucom. I'm the creator of the Save the Marriage system. You can find it at savethemarriage.com. That's savethemarriage.com. That's a program to help you figure out what the root cause of your problem is and deal with it at the base level. I'll tell you more about that at the end, but let's talk about this piece first. I want you to imagine that there is this place that you want and something's in your way, because that's likely why you're watching, and that what you want is traction. You want traction in making progress, right? You might have tried things before and you just can't find it. So you want to find traction for what's going on. You're trying to get that. So I want you to think about the fact that there is this space between over here is what's often going on, distraction, and where you want to get to over here, and that is traction. And let's talk about what's in the middle of that. Action. That's what makes the difference. And unfortunately, that's where people get lost. Let's talk about how we get lost. One of the things that I find to be particularly true always is nothing changes if nothing changes. And what I mean by that is if you don't bring changes into your life, you're going to get the same thing that you've been getting unless something external, right there. So there are two places where change can happen. One is external to you. Something out there happens. It's usually not something we want to have happen, or something comes from within. And when something comes from within, we have some choices in the matter. We have our own actions that can change that. If we wait for something out here, it's likely to go counter to what we want. So that is true, in relationships. If you don't take action to repair things, the next thing that happens, the external actions are often to take away your options, to further destroy your relationship. And so if you don't change anything, nothing changes for the better. It could change for the worse, though. Okay, so let's go back to that. What is the real problem? What's getting in the way? Now, everybody has a history, right? And I recognize that lots has gone on. Lots of things have happened in the past that bring you to where you are. That's just the nature of life and in your relationship. And you've gotten into habits. And so the big thing that I watch from people is distraction. And we live in a very distracting world. In fact, it's only gotten more so. We talk about the acceleration of information coming at us all the time. And that information can flood the field, as many experts talk about it. When you flood the field, there's just so much coming at you that you can't parse out one piece over another. And so maybe you're worried about this, and then this comes along, and this comes along, and this comes along, and this comes along, and suddenly you're so flooded with all of that. The field is flooded. You don't know where to put your attention. And when you don't put your attention anywhere, no action comes from it. So that's why we want to be thinking about how we're trying to move forward so that we have an opportunity to make things different. So let's go back. One of the core beliefs I have is that the majority of relationships, of marriages, get into trouble for one reason. They hit the pause button. Now, what I mean by the pause button marriage is that, you get married because you're deeply in love and you want to spend the rest of your life with this other person. And you probably even believe that you two already have what it takes. You already have that love that's going to get you through. That's what most people believe. And the problem with that is that most people don't have a clear understanding of what a relationship needs to be successful. Nobody ever told them, but they believe that they have the love that it takes. And is that true for you? I mean, did you think when you got married that you would ever be at this crisis point? Did you think that you would ever be at the place where your marriage felt like it was in jeopardy? Most people would tell me no. I've asked this question many times, and yet here we are. Many people get into crisis because they hit the pause button. So what happens? You get married, and then you have to get back to life, right? You have to move on. And so maybe it's, we can get back to our marriage after we have kids, then after our kids are in school, and then after our kids are out of school, and then after our kids have found their mate and had their kid, and on it goes, right? Or maybe it's we'll get back to us after I get that promotion, after I make partner, after I do something that gets us to where I think that we need to be, right? That's the other thing that often comes in. Or maybe it's activities. We want to see the world, or I want to accomplish this athletic endeavor or hobby or whatever else. And so something comes along and we just keep thinking, I hit the pause button on our relationship because we're going to come back to it. We'll retire together. When things are settling down, we'll be back to us. And that doesn't happen for one very important reason. You can't pause a relationship, even a marriage. It doesn't work. You're either growing a relationship or it's in decline. That's the only two options. And so you hit the pause button, and then suddenly things come along, one after another. And so while you think that you're going to get back to the relationship, there's another distraction, which keeps you from unpausing the relationship. And that distraction just begins to be one thing after another. And maybe it's a crisis, but the crisis keeps you from moving forward. You may have heard of the story about the frog in the kettle. There's even a book that's named after it. And so let me tell you, first of all, if you've heard it before, what I'm about to tell you is the story that isn't true. So here's the story. The theory is that if you have a boiling pot of water, very hot pot of water, and you throw the frog in it, the frog will immediately jump out because it's like, oh, that's too hot, I'm out of here. But if you put the frog in and you slowly warm the water, little by little, little by little, little by little, it'll eventually boil the frog. Obviously, it's kind of a yucky metaphor, but more than that, it's scientifically false. Frogs don't do that. If you heat up the water, the frog is registering, this is too hot for me, I'm going to get out, and it jumps out. So it's not true. Frogs do not slowly die in a slowly warming kettle. That's not true. But it is true for humans. So while that metaphor isn't true for frogs, it is for humans, and not about hot water. It's about life, right? We keep adapting to things in our life. So maybe you found yourself having repeatedly adapted to bad things coming in your relationship. You haven't fixed those things in your relationship. So whether it's communication or intimacy or connection time or anything else, over time, you lose track of those things. And slowly, 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 you adapt to the new levels of disconnection. You adapt to the dangers in your relationship. You adapt to a hurting relationship, but you don't see it. And so because of that, you get stuck in what I see as a constant crisis, a chronic crisis. So what often happens for people is they have a crisis that pops up in a relationship. Something suddenly alerts you that there's something wrong in your relationship. But behind all of that, the pause button is there. So you have this crisis. And then as you kind of move through the crisis, you don't really resolve it because you don't know how to resolve it. Nobody ever taught us those skills. So most people don't know how to move beyond them. And so the crisis kind of just fades into a bigger chronic condition of disconnection until it erupts again in another crisis. And you try to wait it out because that worked last time, right? I mean, it simmered down, and then that becomes part of the chronic problem. And then another crisis pops up because nothing was resolved. And so it emerges in another way, another fight, another argument, another point of disconnection. And you just wait it out because that's what you're learning to do. And it doesn't get resolved and it becomes more of the chronic. And so we have this kind of cycle of crisis, chronic, crisis, chronic, crisis, chronic. All the while, the water's getting hotter and we're getting used to it. So we're being distracted, not just from what's in our relationship, but we're distracted these days by so many things coming at us. So much in culture is coming at us that we are constantly distracted. We've got these devices that are constantly in our hands, distracting us from other things. We can scroll all day long, distracted from other things. And so in the process, it becomes more and more deeply embedded in us. Instead of having a crisis and resolving it and healing from it and being strong again, it just is falling to the background. I knew somebody years ago, back when I was doing my training in the medical field, who had brittle bone disease. Brittle bone disease happens because the bones never develop correctly. They don't have the hardness that they should. And so you're constantly at risk of fracture. And so what would happen for him is he would break some bone and it would heal, but it would only heal to the brittle place, the place where it would break again. And so the doctor was just kind of going, well, I'll see you next time, right? And so the rest of us who don't have that very cruel disease might break a bone and the bone heals and it's ready to go again. Like it's got the same hardness and same capacity for holding you up as it did before. It fully heals. That's not true for this person. He would break a bone knowing that there was going to be another one down the road and another one down the road. What I've watched is that couples pretty much have that same brittle bone disease in their relationship because they never actually resolve what's underneath it. Why? Because they're distracted. They didn't even know what had happened, so they don't know what to do. They're distracted. And so you can't get traction when you're constantly in distraction because you don't know the action you need to take to get there. That's what I've spent the last over 3 decades trying to help people to see the path through action. How to get there through action, not distraction. How to move beyond the distraction to find their traction through action. So I ask you, where's your focus right now? You're watching this or listening to this because you know that there's been distraction and hurt. You know that your relationship is in trouble. But where's your focus? Where are you putting your focus now? Not where was it earlier. We can't go back and undo those things, but we can decide to do things differently going forward. We have a chance, an opportunity to do things differently going forward. Nothing changes if nothing changes until it gets so bad that there's no way to turn it back. So if you find yourself at distraction, we need to change that. We need you to have a plan of action. One of the fundamental things that I suggest for people I am coaching with is that they have a plan, not just I thought about a few things or I've taken a few notes on my phone, but a plan, a written out plan. That's why in my VIP program, I actually have a fill in the blank plan. Like it guides you through the process. It's fill in, walk through this process and you have yourself a written plan because it's that important. You need a plan. So whether you use my resource or come up with your own, you need a plan to work on, and you need a plan that addresses the underlying issues, something that helps you unpause what's going on. I'm in the midst of finishing up work on an app that helps walk you through and keep you on track of unpausing your marriage. And the way we created it is it keeps you from being distracted. It follows you through to help you stay away from distraction so that you can get traction. That's what we're trying to move you towards. So if you're at the place where you're realizing that even if your spouse kind of out of the blue said, I'm done here, that you recognize that there was something before, that the problems were there before. They're not out of the blue. They likely go back to the fact that you hit the pause button. You just didn't know it. That's a big thing to understand. You didn't know it. If you had, you wouldn't have done it. But here we are. So now we have to find a way forward. If that is something that describes you, please let me suggest that you find something that gives you some path forward, addressing those underlying issues, addressing the disconnection that has come into your relationship. I would love to be a part of that. If you want that, you can check out my system at SaveTheMarriage.com. It's the Save the Marriage system. It's been used by people around the world and has been proven to be very effective, even when people feel like they're at the end of their rope and only one person wants to work on it. That's all I need is one person to start the process. So if you're that person, please check it out at SaveTheMarriage.com. That's SaveTheMarriage.com. If you join now, you can get a free week of my VIP program where I answer questions on a weekly conference call, where I have the fill in the blank plan, where I have a way of assessing your relationship, where I have my apology letter formula, where I have a whole training on understanding space and connection, where I have a whole training on understanding the core principles of saving your marriage, plus about 500 other trainings that fit your situation that can be helpful for you. And I've even got them categorized in which ones are most important for you. You can take advantage just by joining for the free week after you purchase the system, again, starting out at SaveTheMarriage.com. And if you want, you can even grab a get started session with one of my coaches. We only promise them to people in the United States, but we do try to get to people wherever they are in the world. And all you do is claim that on your download page once you've made the purchase. So check that out at SaveTheMarriage.com. That's SaveTheMarriage.com. This is Lee Baucom wishing you the best as you work to save your marriage.
You've been listening to Save the Marriage podcast. For more information and help, please visit us at SaveTheMarriage.com.